Really have to start with Liverpool 2, Manchester United 2. Let's get into it, chaps. Vitushan, a good point for your boys. A change in mentality was the key, according to Amorim. And having that change in mentality and some players that can run in the centre of the pitch, it worked. And surprisingly, Manchester United got a draw.
Yeah, disappointed with, Manchester United will be disappointed that they only got a point.
Imagine saying that on Friday.
How about that?
Wild. Absolutely wild. I did like the fact that the performance and the result just made Ruben Amorim, Bruno Fernandes and Lisandro Martinez, who spoke to the BBC, it just made them angry.
Yeah, it did.
And I thought that was quite refreshing.
Yeah, because they were basically of the opinion of that, well, we can do it then.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah,
and I think that's a perfectly acceptable position.
Yeah, definitely. But no, it was a pretty wild game. Genuinely, about as a Manchester United fan, 15 minutes before kickoff, when you're watching the teams warm up and you're looking at the weather, the only thing I thought was, the only solace I had at that point was, thank God this is not Old Trafford, imagine the leak.
Yeah.
Imagine the leak.
Do you think that was potentially a leveller? Because there were a lot of slips for both teams, particularly in the first half. I think they got used to it a little bit more.
I don't know. Because of the drainage, the ball actually, between player to player, certainly not off Trent Alexander-Arnold's foot, but the ball player to player seemed to be moving quite slickly, and it seemed to be conducive to playing, I suppose, a bit more one touch, which Manchester United did well for the first time in a while. Yeah.
Who won the individual competition that Matthias de Ligt and Trent Alexander-Arnold were going for world shittest defender?
Well, I mean, yeah, he was at fault for both goals. I don't think de Ligt had that bad a game.
Don't say anything. Let that out there.
Yeah, he was at fault for both goals, but beyond.
How was the theatre, Mrs. Lincoln? Did you enjoy the play? I know your husband got shot in the fucking head. But how was the play?
But the comparison there is with Trent, who I think was just consistently bad throughout.
Trent's more Hollywood when he does it. It's noticeable. He does it in a Hollywood way.
When he does it,
there's helicopters with spotlights going around. The Lick just does it in a very functional, this is what I'm doing kind of way.
Well, I mean, he's a Man United player.
Exactly.
I suppose the thing about him getting hooked was, I suppose, we're jumping right to the end there, but I thought it was interesting because one of the things that is Arne Slot's super strengths, as it happens, is Liverpool have started first half poorly throughout the season, which was the case on Sunday, but he makes changes quite early.
They're always so good in the second half.
And he brings it back, but he was probably quite late in bringing on Conor Bradley for Trent Alexander-Arnold, who then
immediate impact, didn't he?
I think, do you know what? But that's a really interesting point, and I think what that was a real baptism of fire for Slot, I think, on the size of Club Liverpool are, the size of the narrative around it leading up to the game. I think, Alexander-Arnold had an absolute beast, but Slot can't drag him at half-time.
No.
It kills him. It kills him.
Beast was a good thing when I grew up.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I got that wrong.
Yeah.
But he had a shocker anyway.
He did have a shocker.
But you know what I mean? It's not just like a regular common or garden game. If Trent Alexander-Arnold's not waiting for a contract and potentially moving, if it's not a home against Man United, and he plays like that, and it's very difficult for Arne Slot to. I mean, I think he should have dragged him, but it's very difficult for him to do it. Yeah. I think if it was any other player, he would have.
You create a longer-lasting story that's unhelpful, don't you? Which actually he and they have been really, really good at managing this season. When you consider Van Dijk, Salah, and Trent Alexander-Arnold all have these contract situations looming, and it's just bouncing off them, isn't it? It hasn't really been an issue until the reaction to this game, which again I think they'll probably just. Well, I mean, there's been a bit
of chat with Salah, but I mean,
but what I mean is it's not really affected them in any noticeable way. No. I thought a lot of the kind of criticism we've had of United this season. And for a few seasons, but also under Amorim, has been that they've been very easy to play against and they don't give you a huge sort of challenge as a defensive unit. And they did that. They made it really, really difficult for Liverpool. They were finally kind of difficult to play against. They had a lot of energy, a lot of fight. And I think there's a sense of maybe it feels a bit undignified for a club that massive to have to go back to basics and to have to scrap and to make it difficult for the opposition. But they did it really, really well here. It was a brilliant game in the second half, wasn't it? I sort of got caught up in the hype a bit. I thought this might be bad for United here. This might be a lot of goals again. But then it was kind of a little bit of a damp squib in the first half.
It was
second.
Definitely.
My God, second half.
Yes, please.
It was great.
It was chaotic.
And I think you're right. I mean, with all the idea of doing the basics right and fighting and scrapping and so on, any good side just does that. with its Guardiola's Manchester
It has to be
City,
a basic requirement.
Yeah,
right?
you've got Ferguson's Manchester United. Whichever team you want to pick from the top flight in this country in recent years, they all just do that.
Martin,
but sure,
Southampton.
I think it's the first thing that goes out the window though when you're trying to
Sellers
be a
is
bit
Southampton.
galaxy brain.
I mean, I thought
Jurić is Southampton.
I enjoyed
Jordan
it.
Strachan Southampton. Pardew's Southampton.
Yeah.
Can I have a moment for Mr. Nathan Jones?
Nathan Jones is Southampton.
Oh, dear.
Is the list endless? Possibly. I'll stop though. Carry
No,
on.
was this on the same day that Sunderland beat Portsmouth?
It was, 1-0.
Just want to try and balance it.
Yeah,
out
fair
somehow.
enough. We're not the BBC. Don't care.
No.
We much prefer Portsmouth than Southampton in the studio. Full stop. Carry on.
I am Ange Postecoglou. If everything was balanced.
More on him in a minute.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh.
Well, look, the mentality change is what Amorim said after the game, and even Lissandro Martinez, as you said earlier, Vish, he pointed to his head and he was like, "That's what it was." Because we obviously hammered them for that performance against Newcastle. We hammered them for other recent performances as well. But this was it was much better. I understand that they had more players at their disposal for this game, and it was a completely different midfield. But still, you're not saying in previous games, oh, well, you've been beaten by a better side or a side that are in good form and you're not in great form. It's the manner of it. It's the deeply embarrassing nature of some of these performances. So you can have all the personnel if you want, but if you don't have the mentality, as they say, to do it, then you're not going to get anywhere. And this was, you saw it. I think all these players, they probably, I would say, certainly under Amorim, he's not been there that long, but I would say actually that was a real hitting rock bottom against Newcastle.
And what this game against Liverpool has to be is the platform which they build from.
Yeah.
He has to be able to. And I wonder whether it's just. I wonder what was motivating the performance. Whether it was a rock bottom kind of thing that you're talking about, Marcus, or whether it was, to be fair to Ruben Amorim, what he had asked for a week or so ago was some time with the players to actually work on things and work out how they want to play. And he'll also have another week now, won't he, where he could do it again. So we'll see in the next performance. But whatever it was definitely very, very different. It felt different in energy. But I actually think if Matthijs de Ligt doesn't play or perform so badly in such key moments, they might have got more out of the game. Because I think they were very deliberately stodging up the midfield and working really hard in midfield. They were very deliberately targeting Liverpool's right-hand side, which worked very well.
Dalot had a great game.
He did have a good game. And it was only really the goal from Gakpo comes because it's a poor clearance, and then De Ligt sells himself way too easily. I don't know what you're doing as a professional footballer at that level if you're not knowing by watching tape or watching during the week, that Gakpo's going to cut back inside. I mean, he sells
if he stuffs it in the corner with his left foot, you kind of go, okay.
Exactly. And you've done your job.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating. If you know just a little bit about football and you've played a bit of football, even at a really shit level, it's frustrating to watch because De Ligt knows that if he puts a big slide in, it looks like he's trying to do something about it, and it's just good play from the forward player. It's actually brainless defending. They couldn't get back in the shape quick enough because the clearance was poor. He then makes it really, really easy for Gakpo, and it's a good finish and everything. And Gakpo's a good player.
Gakpo's a fantastic goal.
And then he follows it up for absolutely no reason by having his arm up in the air. Something that wasn't really a dangerous piece of play and gives away an obvious penalty.
It's like he was flinching that it was going to hit him in the face.
And he's a big lad. Like, you shouldn't really be doing that at all.
It's a shame because the back three were actually pretty good otherwise, and it's those rush of bloods to the head that Amorim needs to really work on.
I actually thought Martinez was very good.
Well, it was. I mean, he took his goal superbly.
Brilliant guy. But that is not a centre-back's finish.
But the back three, it was an Argentinian centre-back. the back three, though, you saw with Martinez in particular stepping up into the midfield, which is where they need help. It was highlighted on Match of the Day. They've had a huge gap in the centre of midfield for so long, and they knew that they were going to, even with the extra bodies in there, because they don't have that type of central midfielder, I would say, at the moment.
No.
Ugarte, there's a hope with him. It's still early days. He did have a good game, but just having that. But all the best sides, John Stones doing this last. It's not.
But also, you don't necessarily need to do it in a kind of Baresi-esque role, do you? You don't need to be a playmaker from deep. You just need to be someone who's comfortable with the ball. Adding an extra option, even if it's just a relay pass out wide or back in the middle, which is why I think, you touched on like the effort and endeavour of Manchester United. I think there were a lot of bravery as well, and that's not just kind of going into contact or taking contact. It's a lot of like playing out of trouble, playing positive passes. Ugarte's clearance at the end of the game, which leads to Harry Maguire's chance, at the death. I think a lot of times Manchester United play that ball back to Onana, and he just thought, right, there's a bit of space over there, and he didn't get a great contact on it. It could have been horrendous, but it kind of spoke to the general vibe of what United were trying to do in the match. We're like, play it forward to someone. And the number of times where they're in tight spaces and they were playing one touch, and often like I found myself watching it thinking, just get out to the other side where there's few of their players. But actually, Manchester United kept their composure and ended up working those situations really well.
They found some confidence from somewhere, and I don't know if it's just the occasion or, like I say, whether Amorim's had time to work with them.
But that's the fear that it's the occasion, isn't it?
And if it is, that's. I mean, you might as well just forget about it.
Yeah.
Because next week's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
But
They were different against Man City as well. I know that was a smash and grab and it was late on, but it's interesting. It's another occasion where they performed better.
you know what? Man City themselves used to be like that back in the 90s, didn't they? Used to be broadly terrible, but they always play really well against Man United. Like it's a kind of inversion of that, really. But look, I hope for their sake that it's more than that. But I find it very, very interesting that they are able to raise themselves to that level for this game. But having said that, and that sounds like I'm criticising them, which I guess I sort of am a bit. But having said that, it would have been easy for them to approach it in a kind of damage limitation way, but I actually thought they didn't cower. They didn't kind of backs to the wall it at all, really, which is a really encouraging sign.
Yeah, I mean, they were going for the win, weren't they? I mean, the equaliser was lovely, wasn't it? It's kind of been lost a little bit in it, but Diallo has been a real bright spark, and he's showing up in these moments.
Especially given the first time he had a chance, he headed it backwards, which was amazing.
When I first saw that, I thought,
took a while to understand, didn't it?
Was he trying to get like one of the most outrageous assists of all time? But then, no, he just
play it safe, back to the keeper.
Gucci it with your head.
Yeah, exactly. Is he gone with some sort of Gucci kind of style thing?
That's a very generous interpretation.
Hence I've
no, he's going for the Gucci there.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to believe, but it became very apparent that wasn't the case. Perhaps they did get a lot of inspiration from famous Manchester United fan Luke Littler winning the darts championship.
Oh yeah, apparently there was talk of that, wasn't there?
There was talk of that.
He wanted to parade his trophy around Old Trafford, doesn't he? He still wants to do that.
He did, as our very own Luke the Nuke. What do you reckon? Or Luke the Puke? What do you reckon?
I bloody enjoyed the darts. I enjoy it every year, and I'm very pleased for Luke Littler. It's very difficult to see how that record of being the youngest ever champion is ever going to be broken. I think you've got to be 16 to be a professional darts player.
Have you really?
And he's only 17 and he's won the world title.
Is that why Delict's hand was up there?
Possibly. Could have been, yeah. You look very closely and zoom in, there's a dart in his hand.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
The thing I found interesting from Liverpool's point of view was I don't necessarily think this is, it's a positive result for Manchester United because of Arsenal's draw with Brighton and generally just how the second half played out. I don't necessarily see it outright as a negative performance for Liverpool, but I did find it interesting that I think maybe in those kind of games, obviously Liverpool on TV quite often, but in those kind of games in particular, you kind of get brought in to the world of the Liverpool fan and some of the things that they're not particularly happy about. And obviously there's a wider soap opera with Trent, but I think you saw a bit of the Robertson stuff as well, which I know we're kind of perceptive of whether. But also their midfield three was quite interesting, wasn't it? Because Curtis Jones didn't have the best game, and so the onus fell on McAllister to do a lot of the driving forward. They're like, I think they're going to win the league. I think that's not particularly outlandish, but I thought there was little things that came through there on Sunday.
So I think fullbacks for them can be a problem, definitely, and I agree with your assessment more broadly. But I would also fall down the side of the opinion that Roy Keane gave after the game, where he said, "Look, going to win a title, you sometimes get yourself in a bit of a war against a big club, and the conditions are tough or whatever. And you come away with a point, you go, fine, right, we go again. Them getting a point against Man United." It's not the end of the world. It just maybe to some people might feel like that because the anticipation of going into the game against Man United and then being so poor last time out means you come away with it feeling a little bit disappointed. But I don't think you should at all.
Yeah, I mean, they're still sitting pretty. Do you know what I mean?
Essentially where they were before the game.
Exactly, I think with the with what we've seen with Guardiola's Man City, there is this belief now that you have to win every single week, and if you don't get 90
the points total
5
so high
points,
now,
100 points or whatever, it's kind of like actually it's the last handful of seasons because of Guardiola and also Klopp and Arteta. Obviously Arteta didn't win one, but it's a bit like if a striker scores 30 goals in a season, what was Messi and Ronaldo doing? Don't worry about that.
It moves the dial.
It moves the dial, exactly. So look, this can happen. Do you know what I mean? They're still sitting pretty. They're still really, as it stands, easily the best team this season so far in the Premier League. And
in Europe, I think you don't.
Well, in Europe, you could extrapolate that out. Let's talk a bit more about Trent Alexander-Arnold. There's been much talk, of course, that he may well go to Real Madrid at the end of the season. We spoke about Real Madrid reportedly making a £20 million bid for him in the January transfer window. What do you make of all this, Jim? Liverpool fans seem to be, or some Liverpool fans, I should say, are rather unhappy about this. They see him, he's the scouser in their team, they chant he's the homegrown lad. If they were to lose him, I think it would be quite a tough one for them to take.
Yeah, I think £300,000 a week is a lot for any fullback in world football. I don't know what Liverpool's finances are like. I'm sure they wouldn't offer it to him if they couldn't afford to pay it to him. I just think the pull of Real Madrid is so massive when you've already won a title at Liverpool. You're probably going to win another one in front of your fans. One of your best mates in football is playing at Real Madrid. You've won the Champions League with Liverpool. I just think if ever there has been a set of circumstances where a player would want to go to Madrid, it's now. Mm-hmm. I can sort of understand the frustration at Liverpool maybe not getting a transfer fee for him, but that's not on Alexander-Arnold, is it? Mm-hmm. It's interesting that there's talk of Real Madrid making a bid now. They're never going to sell a key player in a January transfer window in a situation like this, are they? So, yeah, I mean, I understand why fans would be sad and disappointed to see him go, but if I were in would any of you not go to Madrid in his situation?
Yeah, I understand that point. I think that what's interesting to me is that in a lot of key games, maybe not a lot, maybe that's harsh, I think there's something quite inconsistent about him in terms of as he is as a player and in terms of his performances. And the interesting about yesterday was that he was actually pretty poor passing the ball and going forward as well. And maybe a game that suits him is probably the game that happened just before Christmas at Spurs, where he has the run of the pitch and no one tries to bother picking him up, and his quality is so evident that you're like, fucking hell, he looks like a world beater. And I feel like, and Liverpool fans will see him much more than me, and maybe they'll disagree with this, but my broad position with him is that he's quite inconsistent. And when you need someone to be able to do that part of the job consistently, I don't think he can do it at a very high level very regularly. And I actually think a bit of further evidence to that would be the game at Arsenal, where they drew 2-2 when I thought he was poor. If you look at Jamie Carragher's reactions, because Sky Sports do this thing now, for people not listening in this country, do this thing where they show Carragher and Neville's reactions to goals and stuff. I mean, fuck knows why they do it, but they do. So you might as well kind of extrapolate from it. When Man United score their goals, Carragher's pointing like really aggressively at the right back position, like that over and over again, and looks really angry. And perhaps he won't say it publicly, but he clearly thinks that there's a weakness there. And the point he also made yesterday, which I totally agree with, was that he's up against Diogo Dalot. He's not up against like prime Cristiano Ronaldo or something. Yeah. He's up against Diogo Dalot, who, to be fair, has been an okay performer for United among all this crap.
But he's not someone who knocks the ball. He should be knocking the ball.
He should be giving you trouble. Not at that level.
Yeah, he didn't win a duel in the whole game.
And my calculation So my calculation would be from the Liverpool point of view, to answer the question, would be, can we get an improvement on him? Mm-hmm. Can we? Because if you give him a new contract, a load of money for 3 or 4 years, maybe he's worth it. Maybe you love him. He's a local lad. You want to keep that soul of Liverpool there. You want to continue that amazing tradition. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. But it's going to cost you tens of millions of pounds across the course of his contract to keep him. Can you go and get an improvement on that? Can you use your network? Because Liverpool over the years have been pretty good on recruitment overall. Yeah. Can you get an improvement? If you can, take it.
And you've also got Conor Bradley there already.
He's possibly someone who could come in and step in. They probably are doing this, but I don't know why they're not. I mean, if they're not, they should be just sitting down saying, look to him, do you want to stay or not? Mm-hmm. Just tell us. We won't leak it. Do you want to stay or not? Because if you don't, we won't carry on trying to offer you a contract. We'll run it down. To me, it feels like possibly, in terms of a fully rounded player, they could, the size of club they are, the money they've got, they could improve on him.
Yeah,
I don't know about... I think defensively, as exclusively as a right back, I do agree with you, but he's not exclusively a right back. He certainly hasn't been for Liverpool. So I suppose you're almost kind of.
What's his best position then?
Do you know what? If I may jump in,
sorry.
We talk sometimes about players suiting old positions. If you remember Wayne Rooney at Manchester United, an old-fashioned 4-4-2, if he was the sort of support striker, that if in the 90s, I think that would have been great. And obviously it was like, well, where does he play? It's fair to say he made a good fist of his career. Yes, and I think we can say that about Trent. I actually think Trent's best position would be on the right side of a midfield four. With a fullback behind him. But that doesn't exist anymore. right wing back, maybe.
But his best form, certainly his most consistent form for Liverpool, came where Henderson had no qualms filling in a right back for him as he went forward. Yep. And as soon as Henderson stopped being able to do that as well, there were always been question marks about Alexander-Arnold's defensive qualities, but when Henderson wasn't there covering for him, that exacerbated that. The thing I suppose Liverpool would have to do is not only work out if replacement right back, but making up all the other areas that Alexander-Arnold adds to in other parts of the field, which happens, doesn't it? Because, they'll have to replace his creativity from deep. They'll have to, set pieces to a point as well. There are other areas to improve. So it's not just about getting another right back, it's about kind of facilitating other areas.
So just to be clear, because maybe I wasn't clear, what I just said was in the context of assuming that he doesn't want to stay.
Yeah, of course.
And it's whether you try and work really hard to convince him to stay with loads more money.
Yeah.
And I think that if he doesn't want to stay, and he's perhaps finds himself in a difficult position because he's a local lad and he doesn't want to be seen to be Michael Owen in it or whatever, then it's a tricky situation. But
I think that's what it is.
But you've got. I'm not trying to compare him to these because it's a different generation. And it's not even necessarily a virtue anyway. But just to put it out, there's a bit of extra context. When Ian Wright got to Arsenal, he used to sign the contract by looking at it every week. Gary Neville said he never wanted to leave. Jamie Carragher said there are people who want to stay all the time and don't care about that. And I just feel like if your mentality is, I'd quite like to go and play at Real Madrid because they're the biggest club in the world and Jude Bellingham's my best mate, then is there an amount of money that's going to stop that? If not, what's the point? There's no point. It just seems like a big waste of energy for everyone.
The club have got to be seen as
I think
wanting him to stay.
I think they are being seen as that.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think the fans' criticism is not with the club, it's with Alexander-Arnold. I think Alexander will go in the summer, and I think, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, Jim, I think that would be a great move for him. And I think that his qualities as a footballer, which we all know and we all admire and love, will be seen much more at Real Madrid. We know what they like. They like to attack. They like to impress. They like to play a bit of flair. Now, obviously, Liverpool do that as well, but the Premier League is much more cut and thrust than La Liga. Real Madrid, we know that there are games
nicely suited for him.
Totally, yeah, and I think that with Alexander-Arnold, we always think about his game in terms of him going forward and the crosses and so on. And I think when you play with in a side like Real Madrid, of course they are concerned about defence and all that sort of thing. But then they love it, don't they? They want to attack. They want the blockbuster Hollywood moments and all that sort of stuff. And he can provide that. And I think he'd have a great time there. I understand with the fans, people always want players to be clear. They want to go, no, I'm going to fight I'm going to play. I love the team. I'll kiss the badge and all that kind of stuff. But we know in reality that they're an employee and the club's the employer. And I don't mean to take any romance out of it, but my goodness, he's put a huge shift in for that football club. He was a big part of Klopp's system, which was greatly successful.
It's not like he's like 20 years old.
Exactly, yeah. And I think this would probably suit everybody if I'm honest. I think the one thing that managers do like about Alexander-Arnold is that he messes with other team systems. The fact is, you have a playmaker at right back. What do? Do you press him? Well, that leaves gaps elsewhere. He can deliver.
I love watching him play for that exact reason.
Indeed, and if deployed well, as Klopp did, but you've got to have bodies around him, as Vish talked about there, he can be so effective. He really, really can. So he is such a joker in the pack sometimes. And I think Ancelotti would look at him and go, I'll tell you what, we get him. Some of the other opponents in the Champions League and all the rest of it, what we can do with this lad in the team. Sweeping balls to Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe and all the rest of it.
Bellingham's head.
You start looking about like
delicious.
Until
he has one bad game and they boo him.
Get the hankies out.
Maybe from his point of view, just to finish, sorry, Vish, but maybe from his point of view, he's thinking to himself, you know what, am I not as appreciated as I might be? Because some people might say, well, you're focusing on this, but look at the stuff he brings. Yeah. And I think at Real Madrid, all being well, I mean, the White Hanky Brigade can be out in force very quickly, but I don't think there would be. He could really find a lovely home at Madrid, I think.
Yeah, and I suppose the extra difficulty he has is that there's someone in exactly the same situation at the club who is having a totally different reaction because of his form in Mo Salah. And it's the contrast between the two, not least on the same side of the fucking pitch.
Yeah,
makes it all the more complicated.
They are still 6 points clear of Arsenal with the game in hand, though.
I agree. I agree with the coverage yesterday that said that if Liverpool won that, it would have been a heartbreaker for Arsenal, given that they drew. So it's just about the threads on the end of the coattail stuff. There's a lot of football still to be played in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I don't trust Arsenal to do it.
No.
More than I don't think Liverpool will slip up.
Well, I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right, coming up after this, North London gets very angry about referees.
Fernandez, this is Joshua Zirkzee.
Welcome back to the Football Ramble, everybody. I actually thought it was a slightly harder chance than people.
Yeah,
Because it's a dreadful pass.
It was an absolute disgrace from Xerxes.
Yeah.
And if it's because he's had his confidence shot to bits by being dragged the week before, that's United's chickens coming home to roost, because that was a basic pass which he bobbled in off the
Yeah.
If
deck.
you're signing a bloke for 40 million, you've got to be able to play that pass.
He has to be able to. Totally agree.
He doesn't look comfortable with the ball at his feet at any point,
which is
does he?
awkward. Which is awkward.
Not ideal.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to friend of the Ramble, Steve, for sending us that clip.
Played in midfield the week before.
What, Steve? You can become a friend of the Ramble too by heading over to patreon.com/Football Ramble. You'll get access to the Discord where you can chat with us and other Ramble listeners and get ad-free episodes of the Football Ramble up front and on the continent, all for just $5 a month. You'll also get an extended version of every Wednesday Ramble. To listen, just head over to patreon.com/Football Ramble and sign up now. Tottenham Hotspur 1, Newcastle United 2. Ange Postecoglou said it was the angriest he's ever been. Here's what Angry Ange had to say.
On the balance of play, do you think you deserve to get something out of that?
I think on the balance of play, on any balance you want, if all things were equal, we would have won today.
Yeah. And what about the effort, the endeavour of what you put out today, considering all the players that you're missing?
Outstanding. Couldn't be proud of the players, the way we played our football, their attitude, their resilience. Couldn't ask any more of them, and it's a game we would have won if all things were equal.
Their first goal, Newcastle's, what was your take on that? Because I don't think there was much happiness on the bench about the manner of it.
As I said, if all things were equal, we would have won today.
Can you expand on that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, just if all things were equal and balanced, we would have won today.
But what does that mean? Because it's a bit
That just
ambiguous.
means that things weren't equal and weren't balanced. That's all.
In terms of who you had available, is that what you mean?
If all things were well balanced and equal, and we would have won the game today.
Well, there we are.
So if all things were balanced and equal,
Yeah, it would have ended 2-2.
it can't have been a win, because it wouldn't be equal. It'd have to be a draw.
It's very funny and a very regular thing that you hear in football, isn't it? Like, it's a grown man trying not to let a journalist cost them about 10 grand.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a game show, isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely reasonable.
It's just that we've just come out of Christmas now.
Yeah. Might as well put him in the mastermind chair.
Yeah.
It
You know what I
is.
mean?
It is. Yeah, you can't answer yes or no. It is. You're absolutely right. Oh, and you can't call the referee such and such. He was furious. There's no two ways about that, as he said himself. His anger may well have peaked when Newcastle scored their first goal. There were other incidents. But the first goal came after Lucas Bergvall tried to play a pass which deflected off it hit Joel Linton's hand, didn't it, of course. VAR checked it but ruled that his arm was in a natural position and so the contact was accidental. IFAB's rules specifically state that it is an offence if a player deliberately touches the ball with their hand or arm, for example, the hand or arm moving towards the ball, or touches the ball with the hand or arm when it has made their body unnaturally bigger. A player is considered to have made their body unnaturally bigger when the position of their hand or arm is not a consequence of or justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. So,
Joe Linton doesn't do either of those things.
No.
So according to the rules, right, that is correct, isn't it?
It's an amazing example of a kind of the way that information is processed and transferred around different people, and a kind of colossal amount of groupthink that happens when people need something to tack onto when things haven't gone their way. Now, what I mean by that is that game on Saturday was refereed very poorly. There was a lot of stuff to talk about that if you were minded to, about how refereeing was pretty substandard in what is quite a big high-profile Premier League game on the telly. Ironically, that's the one big decision that was absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yet because Ange Postecoglou, in what my view is a bit of sophistry, because they're up against it, they've got so many players out there, that illness thing, they had a load of other decisions that they they were unhappy about. But of course, if he comes out after the game, Ange, and says, "Wow, I was a bit disappointed the way Joelinton put it about a bit," or that kind of challenge on Porro, whatever, it's going to look ridiculous because it's not seen as a consequential area. This is seen as the most consequential thing, and he's thrown his whole lot in with that and looks stupid because it was the one main key decision in the game, in my view, that was actually executed perfectly. It was they went through the procedure as of a couple of years ago as well. Accidental handballs and immediate lead up to a goal are no longer a foul if it's not the same player scoring the goal. So it's all fine, and for him to burn through all his kind of real estate, if you like, on that point, I thought was very, very odd and smacked of someone under pressure for different reasons.
To be fair, though, he didn't actually name that specific point, did he? So,
come on.
Sure, but I think he
didn't do that.
He employed some sophistry.
No, but you're right to say that, Jim, because he didn't make that specific point.
But you're going against your own point because at the start you said the reason he didn't make that specific point because he would have lost a lot of money.
Yeah, no, but he himself hasn't actually made it, so we need to give him the credit there for avoiding that. What do you think about that rule change in 21-22?
I think it's a good rule change.
That to me on Saturday lunchtime, I had absolutely no issue with it.
No, I didn't either.
I couldn't believe they kept it was taking up so much real estate.
That rule change was, I remember at the time people thought maybe you should bring it in with offsides when in the build up to go. You think, well, why don't you make the guy who scores the goal, if he's offside, then that's offside, or maybe the person who assisted it or something. Whereas it's when it's like a couple of passes before, and that's the sort of the frustration. So I think that handball law that was changed in 21-22 that Luke talked about there, handballs in the immediate lead up to a goal, no longer being fouls, I think it was a good change.
And the biggest, in my view, most scandalous non-decision in the game was Dominic Solanke smashing his knee into a goalkeeper's face, which wasn't even given as a foul. Could have been a red card. I think the game overall was refereed very badly. It was consistently inconsistent, and you can cherry pick decisions against your own team. But ultimately, if you're watching it as a neutral, you see that it just wasn't handled very well, and it became a very chaotic affair because of that. Look, talking about the game itself,
one more decision, Luke. Vish, did you think Anthony Gordon could have had a penalty when he came in contact with Dejan Kulusevski's shoulder?
No, because it seemed like just a coming together.
Total accident for me.
Yeah.
No, I agree. That was one of the talking points.
It was.
As well.
I think Spurs gave a fairly decent account of themselves, particularly the second half, given their availability issues. There's no doubt that what say Radu Dragusin and Alfie Gray, I think it was, were able to do.
Archie Gray.
Alfie Gray. Bloody hell. It's a similarly old-fashioned name. Archie Gray. What they were able to do, given how sick they were, and obviously Dragusin couldn't come out for the second half, was amazing. But ultimately, they've come out the back of it and still not won a game. I can see why they're frustrated with that. I mean, another thing I would chuck in there, Marcus, if we're still doing the refereeing thing, is the amount of injury time they played at the end of the game, which massively benefited Spurs. He played almost 3 minutes over the allotted time. Spurs, wave after wave, had the ball and they couldn't score, couldn't equalise. So I think there was leniency there. I do think, interestingly enough, Joelinton does put it about an awful lot and seems to get away with it.
It's fair to say that.
I remember he left one on Porro last season, or maybe the season before, which is absolutely horrific. Like a proper full second late, charging him with his shoulder after Porro headed one away.
They definitely pushed the line.
Howe and let's be honest, it's got to be a bit of Tyndall, hasn't
big time.
They wind them up, don't they, before the game, and they get out there and they get amongst it. And look, it's working for them because, as they've been singing E-I-E-I-E-I-O, up the Premier League they go, Jim. They're fifth. They're just a point behind Chelsea now. And again, you would fancy Newcastle, with the run they're going on and the vim and vigour they're playing with, to get a Champions League spot. It's a long way to go, of course. But they're a force, and it was another good win. But for Spurs, it's the sixth time in a row they've failed to win at home in the league.
Yeah, that doesn't happen because Joelinton didn't handle.
Well, exactly, and this is it. And that's the first time that's happened since 93-94 season. And so with Spurs, yes, it was a little bit of a better performance than what we've seen. Yes, you can lose to this Newcastle United side and maybe unhappy with one or two decisions. But it's still a loss, and you see with these comments, Postecoglou is under an enormous amount of pressure, and I'm worried for the man because he seems like he's almost he's not. He's being very spiky with the press, as one would be. It's understandable, and with Spurs, now you look at them all the way down there in 12th, you think, my goodness,
just a point above Manchester United.
Just a point.
Pretty rarefied company to be in.
And I understand a couple of wins can do that for you, but where are the couple of wins coming from? And Spurs now, with just missing out on Champions League last season, if they don't get a European spot at all this season, that would be a real shame for them. So
yeah, I think obviously
all to do still for Spurs. My goodness.
I think they have a lot of injuries, obviously, but the unusual thing for them, which I feel like you don't see very, very often, is that they're all concentrated in their defence. Like, they're missing so many defensive players that it's all just makeshift, isn't it? And I understand the criticism people have of Postecoglou's style and how they leave the back door open, but I don't think it's entirely that in this little run of games.
But the injuries speak to an issue that Tottenham fans have with.
You mentioned this on Friday, and
like
right
the level of training as well. I think there's there are a few people who have been like quite hot on it, particularly referencing back to his time at Celtic, where he had a similar injury crisis, and obviously it wasn't felt as harshly as it has been right now for Spurs, but it all kind of leads in together, doesn't it? Because I suppose that kind of nature of play requires a nature of training that is going to be exhausting.
They signed a new goalkeeper though.
Yeah. I've never seen him play.
Antonin Kinski from Slavia Prague for 12.5 million plus add-ons.
It's a great Eastern European name, I'll give him that.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So will he be getting a game soon? Because obviously, they had the young lad Austin in there as well.
Well, young lad, but he's 25.
Yeah.
It's mad, isn't it?
He's young compared to me. But yeah, so yeah.
But some nice goals in this game, by the way. Solanke's goal was great, and actually all three goals were really good.
Gordon, he's been obviously rightly Alexander Isak's taken the headlines, but Gordon's kind of had a bit of an uptick as well.
Well,
Hasn't
we said
I think there's a general kind of like lift in form across the board for Newcastle.
The biggest problem for Gordon is his conk seems to be an absolute magnet for problems.
Yeah.
Didn't he go over his handlebars in the Euros and smash his nose up?
Yeah.
And now he's got a shoulder in his nose for his trouble.
Yeah.
I wonder if the maybe the disappointment of only getting a couple of minutes at the Euros, and also you are still working and training, perhaps exhaustion, in going into the new season. But he's certainly been back at the races for a little while.
Are you worried for his conk though?
No.
Okay.
I think he's been very brave with his conk.
Yes.
I think that as well. And I tell you something. Old Tommy Tuchel was at this game. One of 3 Premier League games he was at. He thought to himself,
Doing the rounds.
I've had a few months off. I really need to be seen as
I've got a clock in at 8:30.
Yeah.
Right then, who's that one?
Yeah. and then they didn't sort him out with an email address. He's fuck that, I'm just going to go to a game. can't go to the office, can't log in.
Yeah. Do you have a ticket? It's an all-ticket. You don't hear all-ticket match anymore, do you? Remember that? You used to hear that in the 90s. But Tuchel was there. He would have liked what he saw from Anthony Gordon and maybe one or two others, because it was just one or two others that he seems to have.
It's also worth pointing out, by the way, I think that on this, because this narrative around the game and Spurs being hard done by, which I don't fully agree with. If you look at Newcastle's XG in this game, it's miles ahead of Spurs. Like miles ahead.
It's more than double.
And this is becoming a habit from Tottenham. Like, it's becoming a habit. Like, they can't control games. Even when they kind of have periods of play where they're looking all right, they don't really seem to have that conviction they're going to do it. Yeah. And it's a horrible habit to be in. And there's only so much external. There's only so many external factors you can blame that on.
It's true. Can Arsenal control games? They drew 1-1 with Brighton. Tuchel was at this game as well, but they dropped points in the title race. Of course, Manchester United did them a favour.
So what's he done? He's gone. He was at the Spurs game.
Yeah.
He's gone down to the Annex.
And then he went to Brighton.
And then where did he go after that?
And then
the next day.
Oh,
and then the next day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't go to Craven Cottage. Disrespectful.
Yeah, if you're having a bit of a tear up and you're going to go to all these different games, go there. Lovely place to finish the day.
Yeah.
You probably see Pards in the cottage.
He wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
Trust me, he wasn't there.
Well, because that cottage ain't big enough for the both of them, is it?
Eddie Sheeran wasn't there. I was looking up thinking, where is he? Nah, he doesn't want it.
Yeah, different fancy.
He doesn't want it.
Hey, you got to want it, Vish.
Yeah.
You got to die for 3 points.
You can't have too many pairs of loafers in that cottage.
Imagine the noise on the wooden floor.
Yeah, exactly.
Scuttling to their seats.
It would have been unbelievable.
It'd be like a horse race.
It would have been. Brighton, though, they got a draw against Arsenal. And Mikel Arteta, much like his North London brother, Ange Postecoglou, was very, very unhappy. This was all around the Brighton equaliser. Of course, William Saliba was just to have fouled João Pedro. Head-on-head contact. Now, Saliba does make slight contact with the ball and then clashes heads with João Pedro. Arteta was not happy with the decision. I've never seen a decision like this in my career. I asked the boys, and they've never seen anything like it either.
Yeah.
And it seems to be. And on
I love him to get the boys around the fire.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
lads,
Have you seen this?
Tell him what you told me outside. Tell him.
Yeah.
You did it. Have you seen it?
Yeah. No. But on match of the day, they were talking about this and saying, we've never seen, we don't want to see this kind of thing. And Gary Lineker said, you see clash of heads all the time going up for corners. And I thought, well, hang on. So if Saliba makes slight contact with the ball and then there's a clash, there's an argument there that he didn't foul him. But if I can remove that, because I think that's not where the argument is with a lot of people with this outrage, the outrage seems to be it was a clash of heads. It's not a clash of heads. A clash of heads is when two go up for the ball and no one's in control and so on. João Pedro, again, go with me on this. If you remove that sort of slight touch from Saliba, he's fouled by Saliba.
My initial thought was that it was a penalty, and then sort of seeing it back, a lot of people saying, but you see an angle where he does get a touch on it. I still think it is a penalty. It's essentially...
That's his Arsenal fan, Jim, here.
It's a follow-through, isn't it? It's about the force of it. Had that happened with a leg... You're getting the ball and the man, right? And I think it's the same
Jim,
thing.
Can I say that if it's not given and the referee goes, no, you can do that, what on earth are we going to see in the FA Cup third round? People are just going to be sticking their head. He runs through, boom, don't worry, it's clash heads.
So Arteta, one of the things Arteta said after the game was that the check was made very, very quickly. And I am surprised it wasn't kind of looked at.
We're complaining about that now, are we? It's got. Listen, I can't enjoy these games now with VAR unless it's a good 4 or 5 minutes.
Look, but there were 2 incidents at the weekend as well. The one with Anthony Gordon, which I think that might have been a penalty because of the force of it. He's bleeding on the floor at the end of it. There's also one in the Bournemouth-Everton game between Mangala and Ouattara, which again was a clash, wasn't given. So these things happen. They don't happen very often. Weirdly, they've happened 3 times in a weekend. I do think it was a penalty, but I do understand why Arteta would want VAR to have a look at it.
The outcome of what happened to Gordon's nose has nothing to do with the severity of the foul, though. I mean, I don't think...
I agree with that. Vulnerable conk.
Yeah, exactly. Conk needs to be specially protected.
Ungentlemanly conk tucks.
If he used that conk, if he uses that conk to win the World Cup for England for a winning goal, it's got to be a UNESCO World Heritage site after what it's been through. But let me give you a slightly different take.
Blue plaque on it.
I think the fact that he brushes the ball with his head means that it moves into an indirect free kick. For playing in a dangerous manner. If you look at the laws of the game, it says playing in a dangerous manner is any action that, while trying to play the ball, threatens injury to someone, including the player themselves, and includes preventing a nearby opponent from playing the ball through fear of injury, and therefore an indirect free kick is awarded. That might well be the answer to this, because it becomes very muddy, a big grey area when the ball is involved. Because you can now these days still commit a foul while playing the ball through excessive force or whatever. But in this case, I think it was probably more that. When I first saw it, I thought it was a nailed-on pen. The same way that when you see a goalkeeper punching someone in the head, which seems to never be given, but it always should be a foul for loads of reasons, other than the fact that it just is a fucking foul, but also because it hurts people. So, I don't know. I think, again, definitely not to the same level as Postecoglou. I think you've got to be able to read the runes here and see that Arteta is someone who wears his heart on his sleeve and he's frustrated they didn't win the game. Yeah. Massively frustrated. And sometimes with managers, in fact, a lot of the time with managers, it comes through in these kind of expressions of frustration about quite weird things.
The reason I bring up the VAR check thing that he mentioned is because I was actually surprised by how many pundits were saying it shouldn't have been given. So I think because of that kind of diversity of opinion on it, it makes me think, maybe it should have been looked at a bit more clearly. But again, that is not the full story of this game here. I thought Arsenal were very sluggish, particularly in their kind of attacking play. Passing was really, really off. And they're at a point now, we sort of touched on it earlier, where they keep slipping in situations like this. That if you're gonna overtake Liverpool, you've got to be really, really kind of perfect. We've spoken about this a lot, and they don't look really capable of it this season. I think the new signings haven't bedded in well enough yet. They've certainly not improved the team. They don't look like a better team last season. I think the only one you would say that of is Timber, who sort of half counts as a new signing because he's only barely played. But Calafiori and Mourinho are still bedding in. Generally speaking, they look a bit fatigued, like that idea of we might have to win 4 or 5 games with goals in the 90th minute this season. They don't really look capable of that.
The vibe is not there from last season that it was. And I remember Paul Merson's comments after they were beaten by Man City to the league title on the last day of the season. And Merson said, where do you go from here? you've had it as near perfect season as possible and still just come up short. And that is such a sickener to then have to go again with the fatigue in the legs, with an enormously demanding fixture list and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and we're seeing that in the performances from some key players as well. Like Declan Rice hasn't been at the same level. Martin Odegaard, obviously he was ill at the weekend and he's coming back from an injury as well, but generally speaking, he's not quite there yet.
But without Odegaard,
even
there's such a different team without Odegaard.
I also think the midfield three that they played, I mean, I can see why they signed Marino, but it's not worked out so far.
No.
Yeah.
And I think if you play Jorginho in there, I've seen Jorginho less than a year ago in the flesh be amazing. I remember him being...
He looked very slow.
He was brilliant against Newcastle at home when they won 4-1 last season. He just ran the show. And I think in that position, I can see why Arteta selected him at the weekend. Maybe it was personnel issues and he had to select him anyway. But I can see why he would have picked him. But he was very, very sluggish. Like, he kept getting caught. He gave the ball away. And when you're that type of player, and that's really all you're bringing, it looks bad.
Yeah, Brighton are a bad team to play that type of player against as well, because they're so quick and energetic in that midfield. But Timber was suspended, so Partey had to go to right back, so there's no one else available for that, which is why Jorginho was in there. Obviously, Odegaard's illness meant that they had to have that very, very conservative midfield, and I think that did make a difference. But bright sparks, obviously, Ethan Nwaneri getting another goal, which is brilliant. He came off injured, because that seems to be the story at the moment. But
you have a situation now when it comes to this Premier League, whether you're fighting against relegation, trying to get into Europe, or trying to win the league or top four, or whatever. It's going to really be who copes with losing players the best, because everyone loses players now because there's so many games at the top level. So
this is a 9-game month for Arsenal as well.
Crazy. It's crazy.
I just think with Arsenal, that where Arteta has squeezed so much out of those players.
The lemons, isn't it?
The lemons and the lemons.
Yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't use the same, come here.
Well, you're making the movement like you're milking a cow there.
Well, read between the testes.
They're not
you're not going to get fined. You can speak openly.
They're not milking the testes.
No. In fact, stop speaking openly.
It's not a test. It's not a ball sack they're milking. It's udders.
I thought you were saying about the players.
No, fair enough.
Okay, all right. Read between
still
the
not
udders.
milk.
Okay. Well,
they shouldn't curdle that much.
But I think with Arteta, he's got a lot out of these players, of course. Whereas now, as we talked about the fatigue and injuries and blah, 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 you need the players who then produce the moments, just kind of kick them on. And that's where they lack. And I think Arsenal fans have had that slight annoyance with some of the transfer windows. Maybe just trying to get those kind of inspirational players
I think
come off the bench and do something a bit, you can't just leave it all to... I know he started the game, did he not? But you can't leave it all to Trossard.
He's only signed 6 attacking players, I think, in his time as manager.
Yeah, exactly.
One of those was Marquinhos, another was Sterling. So, that's an area that certainly they need to look at.
Well, the guy who provides all that stuff is Saka, right? And, he's...
There you go.
Play, so.
That's it. That is absolutely it. But they're still second, though. Of course, they're just drawing too many games. Although a draw would be a welcome sight for Southampton. We're going to talk about them after this, because they somehow have reached a new low.
Yeah, they fucking suck.
Before we talk about Southampton, of course, Sunday was very much a ballet dancer's dress. A lot of tutus around. Fulham drew 2-2 with Ipswich. Another decent display from Ipswich, although the story of the game, of course, was Raul Jimenez becoming the highest-scoring Mexican in Premier League history.
Can't believe Pass didn't make it for that.
You know what?
There would have been tacos everywhere.
He's got 8 Premier League goals this season, which is the most since 1920, as in 2019.
I'm not going to pick you up on that, Jim. Not even me.
I was actually confused by that. I was like, 1920?
Yeah, he was in Paris at the time. He was having a lovely time.
So, I mean, we're all agreed that the Jimenez renaissance is a lovely, lovely thing, but it's good to see the numbers bearing that out as well.
It's a renaissance, actually, Jim.
Sure.
A renaissance.
Right. Yeah. Can I quote the WhatsApp group, please? Yeah. I mean, you've already touched on this, but Eddie Sheeran wasn't at the cottage today, the wee prick. Marcus fuming at disrespect, and I agree with you, mate. I've seen Brian Cox there. I've seen Charlie Cooper there.
Well, and also,
we know Hugh Grant turns
Mick Jagger
up.
was there next to Brian. We didn't spot him because he had his DILF cap on.
Yeah.
You think you're better than that, Ed?
Yeah, I think he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably on tour. I don't know. He's probably busking outside.
Busy, it's a mystery to me how he skips the best place to go to watch. It's a lovely spot.
He grew up in West London, though, didn't he?
Did he really?
Well, you spent a lot of time in West London.
I thought he was in.
Well, you're the West London guy here, mate. You're the West London correspondent.
Yeah, because there are a couple of desi pubs, pubs with Indian kitchens, and there was one that there's a couple in North West London where he's got his photo with the owner.
Oh, come
I
on.
presumed he'd.
Well, how old was he?
Like, this is a while ago now. Yeah.
I was going to say he grew up there, though.
Queensbury, I think. Yeah, that's
He's,
the famous one.
he's famously from Ipswich, isn't he?
No, sure, but I think
I used to think, the good lady we used to call the Queen Mother used to drink in a lot of pubs that I used to go to. But that one of her pulling the pint, I don't think it was her.
Yeah,
You gotta love that photo. wouldn't you?
She loved the booze.
You got to love that photo of the Queen.
Of course
Mum.
you do. Yeah,
Come on.
exactly, yeah.
Where was that pub? Nobody knew.
No idea.
Nobody knew, and nobody cared, Jim. It was what it symbolised, of course, about this great nation.
Did you see how disrespectful Harry Wilson was to the referee in this game?
I did, yes.
It was absolutely outrageous.
Was the referee more disrespectful to Harry Wilson? Because myself and Marcus Silva believe so.
It's 6 and 2-3. But at one
was
point,
a red card.
At one point,
That was a red card.
But at one point, Harry Wilson, because it was a penalty. One of the penalties was awarded by VAR, wasn't it? And then Harry Wilson was brought down.
Whereas Marcus Silva said, "How did the referee not see that?"
And I agree.
I agree with
But
Silva.
then Harry Wilson jumped up, threw his hands right in the referee's face, and went, "You absolute fucking prick! You've got to be fucking joking."
Did he actually say that?
Yeah, you watch it back. Yeah. And you think, I'm not sure you should be doing that.
Well, yeah. Listen up, kids. Right? Don't talk to referees like that. However, if you did score 2 injury time goals against Brentford, for me, you've still got a bit of credit in the bank.
I don't think the referee was thinking that.
You shouldn't do it, but you can enjoy others doing it.
Yeah,
that would be my position on that.
Well, that was the funny thing because it was up the other end, and I actually didn't quite see it. But the way Wilson fell, I thought that's a penalty.
That was a definite penalty.
Yeah, you just knew it was.
Do you know what it was? It's a classic example of the referee just relying on VAR.
Yeah.
Just being like, well, I'm not going to award it because the VAR will do it for me anyway, and that's exactly what he did. But the instinct from Wilson at the time was obviously like, what?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Well, because again, with the red card, it wasn't a red card in the first half. I understand people might say the defender was kind of covering up.
No, I think it was a red card. I think it's definite Dogzo.
Yeah.
It's Dogzo all over.
It was
because he's still
Dogzo
having
abuse.
Yeah.
Do you think it was Dogzo?
Yeah, it's a bit Dogzo. Yeah.
Let's go round the table.
You can't have a bit Dogzo.
Well, let's go round the table.
He's going to have a shot. He's going to have a shot with his next touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because his shot would have been just outside the box, I think that's why they were.
Yeah, but Harry Wilson we're talking about, and I think the player in question should be taken
If you
into
think it was
account.
Dogzo, say Dogzo.
Dogzo.
Jim,
I can't even remember.
of course it was Dogzo. I was
I
shouting,
say
Dogzo.
Yeah.
I love how tetchy this game got.
Yeah, brilliant.
Why is Fulham v Ipswich this angry? It was great.
That's why your man who hits his guitar didn't turn up.
Yeah, that's true. Sheeran. Well,
He didn't fancy it. He didn't fancy the cut and thrust of
He
it.
did not fancy it. I look.
He didn't dance in the fucking Sky Sports cameras in that game, did you?
Well, it was so funny because obviously Fulham they equalised Raul Jimenez with a very unconvincing penalty in the first one.
Second one was a beauty.
Well, I think that's what he thought because he does that little funny run up and you think, is he going to wait for the goalkeeper or is he going to stuff this in? And he probably waited for the goalkeeper. But if you wait for the goalkeeper and the goalkeeper doesn't move, you've then got to Ivan Toney it into the corner, which he
Onana
really
almost
didn't.
saved Salah's as well for that reason.
Yeah. So he did the first one and the second one he was running up and I was thinking, I think I would have rather have him shot rather than win the penalty. Just to see. And then he probably thought, better just try and go top corner.
Bracket.
And I
Top
thought,
bracket,
good boy.
Yeah.
But obviously, straight after that first Fulham goal, Timothy Castagna fouls Liam Delap in the box. It was 21 seconds after they'd scored. And I've never been so convinced of somebody who's going to score a penalty in all my life.
He's got a bit of the Cole Palmer about him.
My goodness.
Yeah.
I know it's different. Palmer, I think, is more finesse. Delap, to see that guy in the flesh.
He's got
confidence.
He's got the
confidence.
mentality.
You're looking at the guy who will lead the line for England for many years.
He
in the future.
You think?
You are.
Many years. You think he's going to be the main man?
Well, yeah, because I mean, think about the age he is. I mean, Kane.
I understand the profile of it, but it's the confidence in him that you're displaying. I'm
feeding
by
off
it,
his.
Marcus.
I'm feeding off his confidence. Well, they've talked about this match of the day. Shearer and co were saying.
Who cares about match of the day? You mentioned match of the day 14 times.
He's angling for the job.
It's not announced all of a sudden.
Yeah, Liverpool was saying the other day, actually.
I've never heard somebody mention the match of the day on this show.
I just happened to watch it this week.
Send your CV in, leave us out of it.
They know where I am. No, I think
Because you've made that very clear.
Despite being banned from the car park. Not allowed near the
I'll get the
building.
chopper in.
Have you, Peter Odewingied it?
I haven't.
Have you been at Television Centre all weekend?
Yeah.
with a type of
Television
Pringles?
Centre.
Pub of Pringles. and a
Hold on,
fucking
these are all flats now. Oh, for fuck's sake.
bottle of Fanta.
I didn't realise they'd gone to Salford.
Hang on, he's paddling the canoe up the canal at Salford. He's got a chicken and a fishing rod.
That's a poor reference.
Why?
That's naughty. You've gone over the mark there.
I always do.
You have.
I always do.
Right, yeah, and we edit it out. But we'll keep that one in.
I had one about Haitian death squads last week. Didn't make the edit.
Do you want to? Yeah, I wonder why. Do you want to talk about Southampton or not? Because we've got to get through this.
Yes, please.
I've got a bit of stuff to say on Liam Delap.
Yeah, so do I.
He just looks magnificent, and I know he's done that. But as I say, to see him in the flesh, he's a big boy, as we know. But the way he occupies defenders,
he gallops like a racehorse.
He does.
The lot.
He has this.
He's got the lot
in the video game sense. Like he has a great build.
Yes, he does.
Because he's like. He loves taking contact. Mm-hmm. He chases down like every stray ball, and at the same time, like he somehow managed to be burly and lithe. Because his feet are magnificent.
He's a specimen.
Yeah.
Here's the fly in the ointment that could come along to stop your prediction coming true. Mm-hmm. Ipswich get relegated this season. He has to pick his next club very carefully.
He does. I do agree with that.
If he picks it wrongly,
Manchester United.
He has to pick his next club.
If I was
relegated.
Manchester United should go all in for him in the summer. Like, do you know what I mean? Like
he's a combo of what they like, without wishing to like. Only because you mentioned Manchester United, but he's a combo of what they want Højlund and Xerxes to be.
Absolutely right.
He's also got the ability. He's got the quality. Like this is why I'm talking about Palmer. I don't think they're the same player, of course, but mentality-wise, he looks like a kind of kid who would drag a team through a game.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I mean, you saw the way he disparaged his penalty against Chelsea. He stuffs it in the corner.
Yeah.
And obviously Leno thought, well, that's what he's going to go for that corner again. Well, I'll stuff it in the other corner. and just the way he plays, again, he's not getting all the service in the world at Ipswich, although it was another solid display, and it was, very close to being 3 points. But I think all in all, probably happy with the point because Fulham are having a good season, and they are a better side than Ipswich. But Delap was the point, and we've made this time and time again, this point on the podcast, is that they have a chance because they have an outlet up there. A guy who's going to score you all types of goals. He's going to go on mazy runs. He's going to finish chances. He's going to put away the penalties, and they're the moments you've got to do.
He's always looking to score, isn't he? He's one of those strikers who's a bit like Kane, actually, just obsessed with it, always trying to find an angle to shoot from or to just make it happen.
And they're now on the same points as Wolves. They're just 1 point behind Everton, and that's exactly what they want to do. Is they want to drag those two.
I'm not saying they will get relegated. I'm just saying if they do.
But there's there's a chance. I mean, I think it's fair to say that Southampton are going to get relegated. 6 points after 20 games.
I've never seen a team so consistently bad in so many areas before.
Derby County fans are thinking, come on.
Yeah, well, the goal difference is worse, isn't it? So they actually are currently worse than the Derby County run.
This is such a chance for Derby County.
We shouldn't be this excited about it.
They were beaten at home 5-0 by Brentford. Brentford
won away for about a year.
Well, since May.
Yeah. I mean, the recent timeline is amazing. So you have a historically bad run. You sack the manager. You hire a new manager. A bit of hope. He's mostly just talking about metal.
And he's promising death metal and delivering fucking Nickelback B-sides is what he's doing.
I still can't believe Fulham. Fulham drew 0-0.
Gutting, it's gutting.
They didn't get the Man United voucher, didn't get the Man City voucher. God, bet it.
I just think...
It's like the farmer's tax, isn't it?
It is, it's one of the worst home performances I've ever seen from a Premier League team. And it was honestly like astonishingly bad in every area. Like, I mean, if you look at a player like Taylor Harwood-Bellis, he made his England debut this season.
Yeah.
And that has come from a really odd set of circumstances with a temporary manager who wants to play young players and players he knows. He's been very fortunate there. And I'm not criticising him personally, but he should not be keeping his phone on in March. Put it that way, because he is a million.
Turn your phone off.
Yeah, no one has gone from England debut to so far away from the England squad in such a short amount of time in history that I can think of. I mean, it's an absolute crime that he's anywhere near an England team. They've been so bad. It's difficult to. Words barely scratch the surface of how bad the application is. It's honestly, it's got to the point now where, and I'll never get to this stage, but I can see it from where I am at the moment, where I'm actually starting to feel sorry for some Southampton fans for having to go for it, because they're paying money, they want their team to, I get it, we're all humans at the end of the day, because, I mean, this is literally, with Brentford, it was like, get your forward players to queue up to get some goals stuff. I mean, every single one of their forward players scored, there was so many chances, they could have scored so many more. It's proper stat padding behaviour from Brentford.
Those 2 goals in added time are
it's inexcusable.
Yeah.
You have to have the very basic premise You could apply this maybe to Man United, but in a slightly different way. We talked about at the top of the show. Well, you go into a game, you say, we're in the Premier League, we're at home, fans are here, this is a public event, we have to do the basic stuff well. And they don't do any of that stuff. It's honestly so bad. They're making Aaron Ramsdale
I feel
look
sorry
like a very, very poor goalkeeper.
I feel really sorry for Ramsdale.
Yeah.
I mean, he was basically sit on the bench for Arsenal and not play the season, or go there and do your damnedest.
Get a third relegation, essentially.
They brought on Adam Lallana at one point. I'm not being rude. He's had a great career, and I think he's been a really good player over the years. He can't fucking run.
To be fair,
he can't run.
They were without Flynn Downs and Matthias Fernandes for this, and it's not like they've been brilliant with them. But I suppose it exacerbates the lack of depth in the squad as well.
It's so bad from Southampton this season that if you're a Southampton fan, you might as well just go travelling for 7 months and come back.
Well, because
there's always a team
because the players fucking are.
Yeah, well,
there's always a team who are like, cut adrift and look like, are essentially the whipping boys. But this is like historically bad.
I don't. For the record, I don't think there's anything shameful the way football is imbalanced these days of coming up into the Premier League, finding it really tough, and going down with a very low amount of points. Yeah. That can happen. It's happened over and over again. This is not that. No. This is like we've all wrapped our hand in January, and there's still like 4 or 5 months of the season left. Yeah, like this is slow. This is a slow death. This is slow torture. And if and I know some Southampton fans, well, some of them think, perhaps fairly, that the ownership is just, look, we're coming up, we're getting the Premier League money, we're going to take the parachute payments. And as Andy said a couple of weeks ago, and I totally agree, it's a very, very dangerous game to play, because if that kind of attitude infects the club, very difficult to come back from it. And Southampton have been down the third tier before. Yeah. It's happened to them before. So it's just really, really tough to look at. You want to look away now. That's how bad it is.
6 points after 20 games.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got, what would a Derby get? 11 points, which seems like that seems unachievable. I know that's not the right word to say, but it seems like, how on earth did they only get 11 points that season? I mean, well, this is what we're seeing now. Southampton they've got 18 games to get 6 points to make sure. I mean, that is the target. Do you know what I mean? Like
that's perhaps the only reason that the owners might spend money in January, because they're not staying up. No. So any money that you spend in January is going to be inflated and thus be wasted.
It wasn't a bad afternoon for everybody, though. Obviously, Brentford fans enjoyed it. There was a supporter in the hospitality boxes at Southampton who correctly predicted the final score of 5-0 to Brentford, and presented with a Southampton number 9 jersey by Adam Armstrong in front of a crowd.
He looked really happy to be there, didn't he? Do you see how happy he looked to be there?
She was loving it.
It was the shortest exchange of a conversation I've ever seen. He basically just went, yeah, cheers, and then walked off with someone next to him.
I mean, what do you do
You're
in that situation if you're Adam Armstrong?
You're in the hospitality boxes at this club, and you predicted us to get beaten 5-0.
And you were right.
Here's your prize.
You were right.
and I'm. If
you can't have a go at her.
If it's me winning it, I'm thinking, I don't know if I can pick out Adam Armstrong in a lineup. Right. I need to find out which one is handing me the shirt. Because you're not going to know. You might walk straight past him.
He didn't even start the game.
Yeah.
No.
Deary me.
I think that's probably why he was given it, doing it.
Yeah. It's slightly less shaming.
Yeah. Slightly. At least there was some sort of transaction, though, with the award, because we're going to finish on this. Did you see that Inter Miami's Lionel Messi won the Presidential Medal of Freedom at the weekend?
What is Sleepy Joe doing? Honestly.
He's just...
Some of them... Have you seen... Oh, go on. Sorry.
But some of them, I mean, it's almost like the honour system in the UK, right? It's like it's totally...
I know, yeah. But...
Yeah, at least we don't have the pardon system in the UK. But Messi didn't turn up to the White House to collect his medal.
Well,
did he think...
He's free, isn't he? He can do what he likes.
Jim, did he think, I'm just going to wait another few weeks and collect it from the other guy?
Just turn up. I think you got a package for me.
Yeah.
On inauguration day.
You leave with a neighbour.
Can you imagine someone trying to explain to Donald Trump who Lionel Messi is?
Yeah. Donald Trump gave the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Elvis Presley and Babe Ruth.
Love that. Hey, to be fair...
Yeah.
They deserved it, but they didn't turn up, did they? Yeah. All right, thank you very much for listening to the Football Ramble, part of the Acast Creator Network. Do join Vish and myself tonight for all the reaction to Wolverhampton Wanderers against
those tricky trees, Marcus.
Yeah, the high-flying Nottingham Forest.
I'm excited for that.
That should be a good game. We're looking forward to it.